or the apple, but.
No longer of a minute.
Okay. Okay. Oh, here's Ross, see? See, right, look at it. He's like 30 seconds late. Good evening, Ross. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Skokie Plan Commission meeting for August 18th, year 2022. Before we begin, I'd like to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Motion, Matei, seconded by Commissioner Berman. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Minutes have been approved. Okay, tonight we have two cases, case 2022 29P and 2022 30P. Both cases are related. First case is a site plan approval. The second case is a subdivision and dedication. Do we have the petitioners here? Yes. Do we have a speaker? Please come up. Over there. Over there behind the plastic partition. That way you'll be protected from us.
First, or you can just scroll down after.
Okay. For the record, we have your name and your affiliation to the
Yes,
petition.
good evening. My name is Gary Levitas. I'm the developer for the new proposed project at 8047 Skokie Boulevard.
Okay. Mr. Lightus, would you raise your right hand? Before I begin, anybody else gonna make a presentation tonight in your group?
Well, I mean, Brian Levitas is here with us. He's part of the development team. We also have John Hanna, who's the architect for the project. And we
Okay,
have
can I ask all of you to stand who has information, and I will swear you all in case we call you up, okay? Gentlemen, do you affirm that the testimony you give tonight is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you?
Yes,
Thank you very much. Mr. Lightus, go ahead, please.
good.
Before he starts, I'll just.
Oh, yes, is the notice in order.
The notice is proper and correct.
Very good. You've earned your money. Thank you.
My name is Gary Levitas. I'm the developer for the proposed project. I think some of you may know that we recently completed the project right next door to the proposed development at 8025 Skokie Boulevard. And we have the property under contract and looking to redevelop it and build a mixed-use development consisting of 56 total units. 36 units would be one bedroom and a den combination, and 20 units would be two bedroom units. It is a 5-story building, very similar to the one that we just did next door. We're looking to present this case in front of you, get any feedback, answer any questions that you may have. We feel it's a great opportunity to continue on with redevelopment along Skokie Boulevard. I think the project that we did at 8025 has been successful. We are fully occupied, and I think it brought a lot of vibrancy and starting the life along Skokie Boulevard, which we hope that will continue on as we go further north from Skokie and Oakton.
For the record, are these condos or rentals?
These are all rentals. They're all built at, condo quality units, and I think some of you have been through the grand opening or the open house that we had when the building was completed, so, yeah.
And do you have any prospective clients, rentals for the retail section yet?
I wish I did, but
Okay.
unfortunately we don't. We're still working hard on trying to lease out the commercial space along Skokie Boulevard at 8025. So far, we have not been successful, but hopefully with some of the amendments to the zoning ordinance and what is allowed along Skokie Boulevard, maybe we'll have a better chance of doing so.
Yeah, okay, very good. Any questions of the petitioner? Okay, and then you're asking for a subdivision in the second case and a dedication, or is, or the village asking for that?
No.
He is, you are. You're asking for a subdivision and dedication?
Right, I think this was the reason, you know, to do it. We did the same thing in a prior development. I think this is one of the, we have to do a subdivision in order to complete the project.
Okay, very good. Do you have anything else you wanna? Does
We're
anybody
looking
else?
forward to a great development.
Good.
We're looking forward to working with the village. You
Yeah,
know, it's
we-
been,
I liked your first project, it's very nice.
thank you. The second one's gonna be even better.
Okay. I'll hold you to that.
I'm here.
Okay. If no one else in your group is gonna comment or give any
We
statements.
just wanted to have,
Sure.
you know, the architect, the civil
Sure.
engineer here. Tom is
Let
actually.
me ask the commissioner if there's any questions pertaining to the architect or the design.
What's the square foot of the units from a one-do with the den to two?
The average is anywhere between 800 to about, I think the largest one we have is about 1,300 square feet.
Okay, and the rentals, what's the rate?
Well, this is something that we're, you know, working with, but at the 80-25, our average price per square foot is a little bit over, or about $2 a foot, depending on a unit. And
Okay.
we're proposing very similar type of rents.
So rent for a
the-
one-bed is how much?
It would be somewhere around 2,000.
Okay, and a two-bed?
Two-bed would be anywhere between 24 to 27.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other question? Commissioner Osley,
I have a question that would typically be for the architect, Mr. Hannah, but I'm.
could you have Mr. Head come up?
Well,
the
I was
architect,
just
or-
gonna say, I'm assuming you're also more than capable of answering.
I'm gonna try, if not, we
So,
have
it's
Mr. Ham.
convenient for the two of you, I just wanted to ask the question you suggested, or said 80.
Oh, there we go. I was holding it in. I'm sorry. It's 85 units, correct?
I'm sorry?
85 units?
No, it's 56.
I'm sorry, 56. Terrible with math, apparently.
No, it's all good.
56 units. I just wanted a statement as to why that is the appropriate density for this location, vis-a-vis and in comparison to what is adjacent to the property.
So our initial project, we did all 2 bedrooms and 2 bath. And based on some of the request experiences and to have a variety of different units available for different clientele, we decided to go ahead and do some 1 bedrooms in a den, and 2 bedrooms. So this way we have a variety. It's not just all 2 bedrooms, and it, you know, either, you know, we're specifically marketing either to a family or roommates type of situation, but with a 1 bedroom, you know, 1 bedroom and a den. If it's a single person who wants to live on his own, there's also, you know, an opportunity for them to rent a smaller unit. And, you know, as we go through the leasing process, some of the tenants are, you know, the situation changes. Some, you know, roommates split up and they want to live on their own. We feel if we have a different mix of units in the place next door, we can retain some of the tenants and, you know, have them moved in a building next to us, you know, and vice versa, so.
Okay. Any other questions?
And one of the suggestions, I think, the reason that, you know, initially, we were looking to do a lower density development at the site, but after numerous meetings with the village staff and talking over it, you know, we were encouraged to go ahead and push the density up a little bit and, you know, bring it up and do the variety of units, which we have done.
Similar fascia to this, the building to the south, correct?
You mean
To the
as
north.
far as the facade?
The facade.
That's right, south.
So we had a couple of different renderings, and the one, Hannah is stamped all over the place.
I don't want you to.
Yeah.
God knows that.
Probably double click the 33 and type in 38. I believe it's the second last.
We're almost there. Okay, sorry. There we go.
There you go.
So what we did, we wanted to complement the building next door. You know, the building next door has 3 different colors of brick, and we did not want it to make this building as busy as the one next to it. So, you know, I feel that this brick and the color scheme will complement the one next to it, and will fit in perfectly with what we have going on along
Oh,
Skokie Boulevard.
I do have a question. Parking, is it coming in from the alley?
Yeah, there's an entrance from the alley and also off of Keeney.
Okay.
That was my question as well, Paul. So over under parking, the parking will be on the rear
There's some guest parking that's along the alley side.
in order to facilitate the retail?
Correct,
Yeah,
yes. I mean,
Thank you.
unfortunately, there is no parking along Skokie Boulevard,
right.
so, you know, we had to provide some type of parking for retail spaces.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? None? Okay, Mr. Levitas, thank you. And
Thank you.
Carrie Haberstash from the planning staff will present
I'm getting
planning
out, I'm
staff
getting out.
case. Give us your report, Carrie.
Alrighty. So let's zoom this out a little bit. Okay. So, staff requests that the report be accepted into the record as written.
Request is granted.
Thank you. The concept of a mixed-use building across the street from a mass transit station is supported by the comprehensive plan and also village staff. There are 5 full floors, but there is a 6th amenity, like flex space floor. There we go. At the corner, and then also a rooftop deck. So height-wise measured, it is 6 floors, but it's 5 full plus a partial 6th. 56 residential units and roughly 5,800 square feet of commercial and amenity ground floor space. There we go. Trying to get to the site. There we go. Trying to get the one with the, there we go. Okay, so this is Skokie Boulevard at the top and Keeney along the right side of the drawing, so north is right. And so a lobby entrance, retail at the corner to comply with the pending retail streets regulations that were supported by the village board on Monday, but will be codified at a later meeting. This is commercial space, and this is resident amenity space all along Skokie Boulevard. The facade does step back since it's kind of an angled right-of-way here. So it's not 100% like up at the front property line, but we see this as an opportunity to have wider sidewalk space for the comfort of pedestrians using the sidewalk along Skokie Boulevard. And so there is an entrance off of Keeney near the alley for indoor parking, and then also off the alley, and so they kind of, 2 different levels, so they kind of sandwich with each other. This proposal will have a transit-oriented housing on a difficult-to-develop site, relocation and upgrade of utilities, and widening of the mixed-use alley is a part of the development. The facade will continue an edge along the Skokie Boulevard corridor, and so it kind of frames the corridor and should reduce the width and the perceived width of the road, and should calm the speed of traffic. Plus the removal of the driveway, which is currently roughly here, will increase safety. Due to the shallow depth and irregular shape, relief from the code will be necessary. I'll cover that later in the report. Relief may be needed for 1 or more site distance triangles to accommodate the building structural support. We're still confirming this corner here, and then also the garage. The Floor area ratio is a measurement for bulk in this district, in the CX Core Mixed Use District. And we calculate that to 3.79, which is a calculation of the building square footage divided by the size of the site. So they have received bonuses for having retail on the corner, or having a site on a corner of two public streets, and then also removing approximately 48 feet of driveway along Skokie Boulevard. Okay. If office uses, based on the pending retail streets regulation changes, should choose to occupy in the space, each space would be restricted to a maximum of 2,500 square feet, and also obviously not be allowed in the corner space per the pending regulations. So for parking, there are 56 spaces proposed for each of the units, one for each unit. Residential guest requirement is 14 spaces. That number is met. So that currently, based on the plan, there are 8 spaces available. However, based on the number of parking spaces, a 4th accessible parking space will have to be provided, so that will reduce that by 1. And then also, we're looking to have a continuous curb along the sidewalk here to provide some landscaping and soften the edge between the building and the alley, and that would reduce another parking space. So based on those 2 potential and pending amendments, we'd be down to 76. Bicycle parking, 12 total are required, 11 for the residential and 1 for commercial, and 24 are provided indoors, but we will need at least 1 bicycle parking space for the commercial spaces, either between the trees, oh boy, possibly between the trees on Keeney or up next to the building facing Keeney would be a suggested location. Since each bicycle rack accommodates 2 bicycles, we would recommend providing 2 bicycle parking spaces, but the minimum is 1. Okay. And we have a few items of relief, but I'll cover that in the staff recommendation. So some key concepts to consider, a water supply and sewer capacity study must be prepared and submitted. IDOT will be reviewing this development as Skokie Boulevard is under their jurisdiction. Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, or MWRD, ordinance applies. Utilities, anything on the site must be installed underground. The overhead wires that are currently along the west side of the alley will be relocated to the east side of the alley. And relocation of these alleys, relocation of these utilities in the alley should be coordinated with village staff, because there are other initiatives and projects along the alley on the east side of Skokie Boulevard. And so those relocations should be coordinated with staff. Resident parking, 1 parking space is to be allocated to each unit. Since there aren't extra, we need to make sure that we have 1 available for each unit. If a potential tenant has more than 1 vehicle, they need to make alternate arrangements, either sell their second vehicle or make arrangements to find parking off-site. For the building design, the Appearance Commission will review the design at the Wednesday, September 4th Appearance Commission meeting. The sign package appears to comply with the sign code. We do recommend the consideration of awnings or canopies, since the building is stepped back in places, that there might be a chance to provide a little more depth along the first floor facade along Skokie Boulevard, as long as they don't encroach into the public right-of-way. So if it doesn't work, but consider that design element for the September Appearance Commission meeting. The building is located in an on-street zone zone permit parking area. However, engineering will not support zone permit applications for this development. So they either have to park on-site or find alternate parking arrangements if they have additional vehicles. I'll go back to this. So this is a two-way entrance to the parking, but the door is only 12 feet wide, so the garage door does need to be widened, which would impact the loading area, so an adjustment needs to be made in this area to accommodate two-way traffic. If, assuming the sidewalk may be closed at some point during, or impacted during the construction of the site, that a public way obstruction or use permit must be obtained from our engineering division. Maybe similar to, or consideration could be given towards, like what happened with 8,000 North, where there was kind of a covered walkway for people to walk as a recommended option. The driveway entrance on Keeney needs to be looked at both for the ADA accessible parking space and for the garage. Some of the details of the curb cut needs to be adjusted for engineering review. So the required parking for the overall site is 70 parking spaces, 15 for the residents, 14 for guests, and based on the pending retail street regulations that are pending, technically no parking is required, but we would welcome the idea of having additional provided. So based on previous comments, we would have, the site would have at least 6 additional parking spaces. The parking off the alley, typically we have anything that has parking adjacent to a building, we request a 5-foot clear walkway path, but based on the size of the site and the unusual shape, relief will need to be granted for that. Okay, and per the traffic memo, the southbound left turn lane is presumably for the bank and may be proposed to be removed, but we'll wait for IDOT's opinion on that, and we'll address, it'll either stay or be removed based on IDOT review and approval. The subdivision and dedication case is to dedicate 2 feet of the property to the alley. For commercial and mixed-use alleys, our goal is to have them be 20 feet wide. Currently, the alley is 16 feet wide, so we look for 2 feet from either side. So with this dedication, the alley will be 18 feet wide. And then maybe someday the 2 feet on the other side could be dedicated in the future. Complete streets, just a note that this is a very walkable, based on walkscore.com. It has a score of 84 out of 100, so it's very walkable. It's across the street from the Oakton-Skokie CTA station, so this development supports a lot of the concepts of complete streets. Stormwater management and water conservation rules and regulations will apply. For electrical conservation, consideration should be given to green construction and maintenance practices, including the possibility of joining the ComEd Energy Efficiency Program. For bird strike mitigation measures, which are still pending as far as the policy goes, the village is considering a policy or guidelines for new development, and measures to minimize bird strikes are encouraged. Typical tree preservation and landscaping, tree protection. A tree removal permit is required prior to demolition. So staff recommendation, staff recommends that the petitioner's request for site plan approval for a 6-story mixed-use commercial and residential building with 6 floors, which are 5 full floors plus a small 6-floor flex space and rooftop deck, 56 residential units, approximately 5,800 square feet of ground floor and commercial and amenity space, and indoor and outdoor parking in a CX core mixed-use district be approved, and a 1-lot subdivision and dedication be granted for 8029 through 8047 Skokie Boulevard, Based upon the proposed findings of fact and subject to the recommended site plan approval and subdivision dedication conditions listed below, staff further recommends providing relief from the following. 118-184C3 to allow a retail depth of less than 24 feet. The vast majority of the commercial space along Skokie Boulevard is more than 24 feet wide, but there are a few places where it's less, so that would be one relief item. 118-184C4 to allow less than 50% of the building facade to abut the sidewalk. So it's more of like corners are abutting the sidewalk, but there, you won't notice the sidewalk on private property and public property will just kind of coexist. 118-184C5 to allow restricted uses in addition to the permitted and special uses for a minimum of 60% of the first floor linear frontage. That's based on the pending retail streets regulations. 118-212C to allow a drive aisle to be less than 24 feet wide when serving 20 or more parking spaces. This is roughly 19 feet here. 118-212I10 to waive the 5-foot clear walkway requirement for the alley parking. 118-233E to waive the requirement of one internal parking lot tree for every 15 parking spaces, so we can maximize the parking availability. Sorry. Talking too much. And 118-52 to allow one or more site distance triangles to be less than 15 feet if relief is deemed necessary. Sorry. So prior to the hearing of the subject case before the Board of Trustees, on page 11 is a list of items A through N that have already been accepted into the record. And for the subdivision dedication, prior to the hearing of the case before the Board of Trustees, backing up to site plan approval, the rest are the standard conditions. And then for the subdivision dedication, prior to the hearing of the subject case before the Board of Trustees, the petitioners must reconcile the possible conflicting boundary dimensions. We have some information where there's actually a triangle at the corner, but there's one that doesn't have like an easement or a triangle taken out of that northwest corner of the site. So that just needs to be confirmed and reconciled before it moves on to the village board.
Good. Thank you.
The report.
Any questions of the staff? Yes, Commissioner Berman.
Kira, just two questions. One is relative to the walkway, the 5-foot relief. Is there going to be any walkway there that's required, or is the giving up all 5 feet?
It would be giving up all 5 feet.
Okay. And then my second question is, I got the sense that the second cars wouldn't be able to be parked in the neighborhoods for some reason, or?
Correct. So this development is within one of the village's zone parking spaces where you can get permits to park on the street. But this development will not be supported by engineering because there are already lots of parking spaces, lots of vehicles already parking on the street there, and, you know, having possibly maybe 56 more cars on the street, and the street can't handle that capacity.
So is everybody else that parks in it, and forgive me for not knowing this,
Yeah.
but everyone else has a permit to park in that area?
Yeah, like the 4 flats, and yes,
Okay.
they have the opportunity to get zone permit parking passes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Is
The
there a
same
T-
applies for the development to the south, and then also future developments to the north. It's the same.
Is there a TLD in force there?
I'm sorry,
Is there a TLD in place? A TLD?
a transit-oriented
Yeah.
development?
It's not in place there, right?
No, I mean,
No,
it's
it's
within
not.
core mixed use, adjacent to, or across the street from
Right.
Mass Transit Station.
Yeah, it's CX zoning, which is our highest mixed-use zoning district, and has the highest density. and also the lowest parking requirement.
Right, okay, so it doesn't require a TLD.
Mhm.
So, what you're saying, or?
Well, it's transit-oriented development,
It is, okay.
but
It
is-
supports the concept, yeah.
but it's not what we call it here.
Okay, all right,
We call it residential above commercial.
okay,
Mixed use.
Mixed use.
got it. Thank you.
I
Thank you
have-
for clearing that up.
One question for me, just out of curiosity, it was determined that it was preferable to relocate the utilities above ground to the other side of the street versus burying them underground?
Ideally, they would be buried underground, but based on the project to the south and looking at other projects to the north, the cost is quite prohibitive to bury the utilities. So relocating to the east side also involves all the residential buildings to the east side of the alley. So burying the utilities would also require, connecting all of the different units also to that system, which just makes it a cost prohibitive expense.
So burdensome to the developer to make those
Yes.
individual connections?
And the village, if there would be a share with that. Sure.
Carrie, is the development to the south of that, the new one buried as well?
No.
I believe those were,
Those were
I'm not
moved
sure what happened to the
also.
south alley.
Yeah, let me explain on this development and the previous development and the two additional developments that are gonna occur at Cleveland. They are all have above-ground utilities placed on the east side of the alley. So we have to move them from the west side to the east side. The construction could not occur because of OSHA requirements and ComEd requirements. So there has to be a distance of at least 20 feet if you're using mechanical equipment and 10 feet for workers. So it just doesn't work to keep them on the west side of the alley. And as Carrie indicated, the number of units on the east side make it difficult to do that because we'd have to change every service. We'd have to get inside each of the buildings. We'd have to change their fuse box connections and the meters, and everything would have to be modified and their yards disrupted. So the best solution at this time is to just leave them above ground. The village is doing all the work with ComEd.
Sorry, that raises more questions for me. I guess I'm a little confused now because you suggested that part of the justification was the OSHA requirements and the movements around vis-a-vis construction, but wouldn't you typically wrap those lines and schedule the pick movements of any
They will
moving
wrap,
equipment?
they still will have to wrap the lines just because of the distance between the lines in the building. However, from a standpoint of continuous use, not even just the construction,
I
you
see.
cannot have those power lines adjacent to a building with windows, fire and other, concerns.
Right, okay. So that would have brought me back to my original question about why they didn't go underground, but I
Right.
think I understand the logic.
Any other questions of staff?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Bear with me, this doesn't want to stand up tonight. With the parking spaces, if one, because it's across the street from the public transportation, if a unit isn't using their parking space, are they allowed to allow another unit to use them, that space? So a one-bedroom, say, doesn't, it has no need for a parking space. Do they have any ability to let that space to another unit? Or,
I suppose they could do that, but we wouldn't want them to, it would have to be tied to, once the occupant leaves, then if the other one chooses to stay, who has the second parking space, so something would have to be worked out, but we shouldn't plan on having 2 or more parking spaces
Okay.
per unit.
and then, where is there, excuse me, where is there other parking in that area? If there's no availability in the area
Mhm.
east of the
Yeah,
building?
so there is village parking, there are village parking lots, but
Okay,
the one at Searle and Skokie Boulevard is intended to be more of a, like a kiss and ride type
Yeah.
lot. And the one by between Walgreens and Crafty Beaver is also a village-owned lot.
Okay.
It's kind of, it goes very deep. It's very skinny and deep. So currently, that lot is being used for some overflow parking to alleviate some parking issues with the building to the south, but that's set to expire at the end of this year. And so it was just, I guess, kind of a stopgap measure to make sure that, you know, the tenants who had expected 2 parking spaces, we could still accommodate the parking needs for all the tenants within the building to the south. But that is to expire on December 31st of this year.
And so that brings me back to the
Mhm.
question of where else is there parking in the neighborhood if you can't park, if permits won't be allowed
Mhm.
to the east of the building?
Any prospective tenant who wants to move in will either need to narrow things down to 1 car or find parking elsewhere.
Or good luck.
I don't know if there's an app for that.
Good luck.
But they'll just have to find alternate arrangements.
Okay. And then another question is, could you show me the picture of the building so that we can see the 6th floor?
Yeah.
I think that was like around 38.
Nope.
Nope, not at all.
We'll get there. There you
That's
go.
it.
Oops.
Almost.
We're plugged in, but it's kind of. Oh, boy.
All right, so
Okay.
my question is with regards to the bird strike
Mhm.
issue. Does having that one area jutting out from the rest of the building create more of a problem for a bird strike? I know I heard you say that it had to be considered, but
Mhm.
I don't know what that consideration would be with this area that's
Mhm.
just jutted up there.
There are multiple regulations that we're looking into. I think Pete said the last count was 20 other communities. And so there are some out there where, you know, if there's glass on the corner would be a consideration. We haven't finalized the regulations yet at this point. We would expect that the first floor would be clear, transparent glass, but with the, you know, the low E type coating, but not to have any sort of maybe bird strike mitigation measures on the first floor. And I'm not sure where we're at, like with height. I think Carvana was 62.
Yeah, Carvana was our standard that was
Mhm.
set at that meeting. So it was 60-some feet.
Yeah.
So we're looking at that. We're looking at, I mean, it's open right now. We're just examining what other communities do and what the bird conservatory recommends. So we're looking at all those different proposals and seeing how we would fit in there.
Mhm.
And this building, they have some of the features that would be looked at, the overhangs, the mullions in the window, and except on a few corners, most of them are not the type of see-through corners because they have the large concrete. So there's different things in this building that would mitigate the strikes. It's, you know, we'd really have to look at it to say, is it totally bird-friendly? The balconies, they look like glass, and if they are, then they would have to have maybe some kind of film on them or something that would prevent birds from running into it, different things like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Berman?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not certain I'm asking this to Carrie because it's a follow-up question to the commissioners or to the architect, but I guess I'd be curious as to whether or not this architectural firm factors in bird strike mitigation like others do relative to the design initially. Peter went over some really good points, but I just wonder if that was considered at all or it just coincidentally fits some of the mitigation we're looking at.
Well, maybe you can ask the architect in their final rebuttal.
Okay.
I had a question that I think complements that perfectly, which came up as a consequence of those comments as well. So now I'm curious as to whether or not the
Okay,
specific
why don't
section.
we finish with the staff report and we
Sure.
can have the petitioner come back up. Carrie, anything else?
Nope,
That's it?
that's it for
Okay,
me.
well, thank you
Okay.
very much.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Levitas, please come up. So I guess the topic right now is bird mitigation, bird strikes. And I don't know if you guys have planned for that or had any kind of,
Honestly,
plan B
no,
for
we
that.
have not planned for it. I mean, I would concur with John, he would
I
probably
mean,
have a better
admittedly, the
idea.
village doesn't have any codes set up yet, so there's nothing to go
So,
by.
yeah, at this point, we weren't really looking into it unless during the standard design. But I mean, I'm sure if this is something that, you will want us to look into, we can. Like, a lot of these glass panels that you see are, they're set in a little bit. So they're not, faced on the front end of the facade. So I think that could prevent that from being, but again, I'm not sure what other communities are doing. We haven't faced those issues before. Is this something that you're working on other developments?
Would you please speak up? Yeah. Come. And for the record, would you give us when you come up to the microphone, give us your name and the firm?
John Hanna, President of Hanna Architects, Inc. in Chicago, Illinois.
Before you answer, if you may, I would like to ask my follow-up in conjunction, because I'm afraid the questions are going to end up impacting your answer and possibly tying this further into a knot. I'm concerned about the bird strikes, certainly, but I'm also concerned about the opposite problem, which you kind of sort of hinted at based on his comments. The honeycomb effect that results from recessing the windows has the opposite effect, which is it typically encourages pigeons to roost. So as you talk about bird strikes, I'm curious and concerned that if you're too successful in one area, you've created a problem in the other.
A very good point. All buildings have windowsills. There's a point where you just can't solve everybody's problems. We do have projects in the city where we are concerned about the bird problem, and we are addressing them. Usually we follow ordinances, so we would hope that if you guys put an ordinance in place, we will meet that ordinance, We have used tinted glass for the apartment building part of it, so that, I know that helps, and as you all know, low E also. We're gonna work and solve the problem as far as this bird issue is, okay?
Have you had any issues with the building to the south with birds?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. Okay.
We actually, really, none of the buildings in the city, this is something completely new. This is the first time I'm hearing of this. It was not.
The city has problems on some of these all-glass buildings, like the Apple Building on Michigan Avenue. People get a hold of this and they just go crazy. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, that actually is a very inaccurate statement, but bird strike mitigations, millions of birds die every year in this country, and it's more than just all glass buildings. It has to do with lighting, it has to do with the planting inside the building, it has to do with lights, migratory patterns, and what have you. So obviously from that statement, you've not considered it at all, but we ought to get a sample of the ordinance to them at that point to take a look at it.
But Gary, I know you manage all your own buildings, so you would be aware of strikes on your
Absolutely,
building.
yeah, if there was an issue.
Speak into the microphone, please.
Sorry. Yes, we have a bunch of buildings in the city and suburbs that we manage and take care of. We have not had any issues, or they were not brought up to us. I'm not saying that it's not a problem, but this is the first time I'm hearing of the bird mitigation issue with proposed development that we have presented in the city or in other jurisdictions.
I'm sure as you've seen with the Village of Skokie and the Carvana project, you're gonna hear more about it.
I'm sure, yes.
So you and your architectural team will probably need to take that into consideration in the future.
We'll absolutely look into it, yeah, and make sure that we, we abide by the code and, whatever regulations the village will have in place, yeah. Just like we do with everything else.
Thank you.
All right. I do have a question in the parking garage. Are you gonna make any provisions for recharging stations for EV cars?
We thought about it. We had a few requests in our other buildings that we had installed. Actually, people had their own chargers. We just provided dedicated outlets for them to plug into,
Okay,
not
as long as you
rapid
could, as long as
chargers.
you could provide them with an outlet, yeah.
Right, yes.
And they usually pay for their own installation, is that what it is, or?
We would help them out and
Okay.
have our guys do it, yes.
Well, just to explain, on a building like this, you'd have to have conduit put in already and have the control box and everything. So a regular tenant could not just
Do
put
it
in a.
himself. No,
yeah,
no, no,
charging system.
I'm sure the infrastructure has to be there before.
Right, it would be dedicated circuit
Yeah.
for the charger and then for a specific location.
Yeah, people don't realize what it takes to put in a charger.
But, yeah, I think there are different types of chargers that are, require different type of installation and how fast they are, how rapidly they're charging the unit.
Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Is the village looking into a possibility of providing additional parking anywhere throughout where some of the tenants could possibly benefit from it? I mean, we've talked about this numerous times, and, even though I feel it's a little unfair for the new developments along Skokie Boulevard, for the tenants not being allowed to seek a permit and park on the street just the same as anybody else would. We've talked about it numerous times with 8025, and we had agreed, initially we weren't aware of the situation, and that is why during the leasing term, it wasn't relayed to our potential tenants that you're on your own and you can only,
You actually raised a good question, because, we are in the process of building a public garage, and I'm not sure what the usage will be, but that's something maybe the planning department could consider.
I
Maybe,
just think it would be.
maybe, perhaps letting tenants park there overnight, when it's not being used by anybody.
With the new project going forward, I mean, we did say that as leasing would start, hopefully, we would definitely inform all of our potential tenants that it would only be one space provided, but you brought up a great point about some of the one-bedroom units that people may not have parking, needed, so that spot could be easily utilized by someone else who may have two cars.
Between
again-
public transportation and ride share, and cabs, they still exist. There are options for people who don't want to drive, who choose not to drive, and I was just wondering whether that space would be prohibited from somebody else who might want to use it, especially given the fact that there's no other parking nearby.
Right, I think it was my understanding, during the conversations with staff, it wasn't specific that only one unit would have one parking spot available, but we would not allow two spots for a unit if they requested it, and then not have a spot for a one-bedroom if they needed it. So we would let people know that they're only allowed one spot in the building, and the rest of it would be for,
Well, to the building to the south, how many of the tenants have cars? The majority of
That was
cars?
my next question, Mr. Luke, was related to what issues have the village had with 8025, and do we have any issues that we need to be aware of as commissioners?
is that a question to me?
I think-
Question to
Or either or.
either or, but.
So, there was an arrangement for, tenants of 8025 to, lease spaces from the village in that lot between, Walgreens and Crafty Beaver. I think it was up to 14
I
spaces.
think there was maybe like 10, but
Or up to 14 were available, and maybe
Could be.
only 10 took up the offer, but that expires at the end of this year. Because there were some, it's my understanding that there were some apartments
So
where they
during
did
the
bid
initial
early.
lease-up of the building, we had some people that were, families that were moving into units, and they may have had more than one car. And before the rest of the units were leased up, if people requested additional parking spot, we would accommodate. And then, there were some issues where people still had additional cars, but there was no parking available because all of the residential parking spots were already leased. And basically, we informed the tenants that they should go ahead and get a special permit from the village and park on the street the same as anyone else would. Well, then we got calls from our tenants saying that is not the case, and our development is not allowed to be issued those special
The zone parking,
Right.
yeah.
So, and at that time, I brought this to the attention of the staff and the issues that we were having and concerns from people that are living in a building, and we're able to come up with a solution and provide a space in a village's parking lot where a tenant could potentially lease a spot for the duration of the time. But that was only temporary solution that will expire at the end of the year. So going forward, you know, obviously, we will make people aware that there's only so many parking spots that are available. But again, due to Skokie Swift being across the street and TOD development, as it would be called in many other places, the intent is that a lot of people that will be living in our building are not gonna have 2 cars, or only will have 1, or maybe no car at all, so they can utilize the Swift and ride sharing. But again, you know, that's what we try to do.
So my concern, Carrie, in particular is, at this point, we have, sounds like a bit of a parking situation at AD 25. Is that accurate?
Currently.
And we're
alternate
adding
arrangements need to be made.
8047 with the minimum parking requirement. They have
Code
met the
complying.
minimum.
Yes, they're meeting the minimum parking requirements in the village code.
We're not
Plus, they
having an
have
issue at
extra. They do have
8025. I mean, we have plenty of parking, and there's guest parking that is available. that
Well, but
is-
there's numerous spots that are being requested in the spot between the parking lot,
That was
which is
the-
village-owned, let me finish.
Sorry.
Between Walgreens and Crafty
Crafty Beaver.
Beaver. So we already have one building with a parking issue, correct?
Currently, yes, because we have
And we're adding a
spaces.
second building.
Mhm.
That's problematic. It's problematic to the neighbors.
I have a follow-up. Maybe this is a dumb question. The lease agreement for those 14 utilized spaces,
Mhm.
was that creating an opportunity for those residents to have effectively an assigned parking space? Or was it giving them relief because they otherwise would not be allowed to park there overnight? Because there is no competition in that, either of those 2 parking lots. They're not full ever.
Well, the parking lot between Walgreens and Crafty Beaver is intended to provide downtown parking for
Sure.
employees and
Sure.
visitors. So, but that arrangement was to enable tenants of 8025 to have a parking space available to them.
Okay.
How many?
But the lot to the east of there is
Mhm.
essentially, as you suggested, a kiss and ride.
Yeah, the
And so there's-
Searle and Skokie.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just making the point that there's plenty of parking there. There's plenty of capacity, so.
Yeah, the
There
intent
are
of the Searle and Skokie parking lot was to provide parking for, well, we
Is
received,
to help support,
to support the Oakton
The Oakton
Skokie
station, absolutely.
CTA station, and not to provide neighborhood parking.
Right.
Because part of the funding for the Oakton Skokie station was through the CMAQ,
yes,
and so
well aware. Full
providing
disclosure,
surface parking.
I was at CTA at the time.
Okay.
Again, all I'm suggesting is whether it's the Dempster kiss and ride or the kiss and ride we're referencing,
Mhm.
or the Crafty Walgreens lot, there's excess capacity at all of those lots. So it seems like there could be some sort of a negotiation that could take
Mhm.
place that could resolve all of these issues
Mhm.
and take advantage of the excess capacity that's there. And I'll yield
Okay.
my time.
To my fellow commissioner, I agree with that. And in defense of Mr. Levevitz, I agree that that is the issue. I recently went to a Cubs game and was able to park easily in that parking lot. My question really is for the village related to the expiry of the agreement through the end of the year, and how does that then equate long-term to both of these buildings going in and allowing residents with excess vehicles to park in that lot? particularly, which is closest to that property?
The density of, this is not a question either, it's a statement, I'm sorry. The density of the developments is in conflict with our requirements if our requirements are insufficient to accommodate the parking that is associated with the density in the building. And I think there is the assumption that typically the overflow falls into the communities, but if the communities are already burdened because of the density in those communities, that there are 4 flats and not residential homes, there is no capacity in the communities, even independent of the fact that we have a requirement there which would make it restrictive on these particular tenants. So, again, 100% correct that something has to give with subsequent developments, because while there is a potential solution on the table that could be resolved vis-a-vis negotiation, if the ordinance stands as such and density continues with subsequent developments, which will occur because Skokie is such a great place to build, then the consequence is at some point we have to resolve that discrepancy, because it will only get worse as developments occur within proximity to one another, because the problem that already exists is compounded by the new development.
And to your point, there are 2 lots to the north, which the village proposes to have redeveloped, that could likely have the same issue and compound this issue.
Okay, well, let's look at the lots to the north, the Cleveland and Skokie Boulevard lot, the southeast corner. At a previous meeting, you already approved a development there with the current parking requirement. So we have. We have a third though. Yeah, but we're looking at it, we require a minimum amount of parking. Some communities set a limit on the maximum number, and especially in the city where they're encouraging people not to have cars, to use the train, to use other means of transportation. So Mr. Levitas and the other development are meeting the requirements. So from a village standpoint, they're doing what we're encouraging them to do. The lack of ridership on the train is an anomaly right now. I mean, it's really due to COVID, the bus riding, everything is down. Even probably Ubers are down in those uses because people just don't want to congregate together. But as this changes, it'll go back to that again.
There's the ideal and there's the evident, right? So the ideal is absolutely correct. It is a transit-oriented development in the organic sense, and so it would make sense that the ordinance would require the minimum amount of parking. That is what a planner would dictate. That is what an optimistic key stakeholder would want. But if the evidence suggests that something other is occurring, then good public policy is to reconsider. Maybe this is the moment for that, and I don't mean right now. I mean in this time, given the increasing evidence and the new developments coming online. I would also suggest, though, unfortunately, that the trends in public transportation and the consequence of people's work schedule shifting, the yellow line isn't going to come back to pre-COVID levels for many years, assuming that it does. That's just a reality we're going to have to contend with. And we can debate the reasons why, but that is what all the evidence is suggesting at present. So even though people may have committed to live there or might, in their best intention, want to take public transportation, they are not taking it regularly because their schedules are, quite frankly, not as regular as they once were.
I think the issue that we had with 80-25 will be mitigated with the new development. The reason that there was a problem with parking is because we were not aware of the fact that our residents, our tenants, were not able to get the permit and park on the street. So it was not an issue for us to lease out 2 spots per unit, but then we found out that that wasn't the case. So going forward, when we do lease out the units, we will make them aware of the fact that there is a problem with parking, and we can only allow 1 spot per unit, which will resolve the issue in the new development. And going forward, we already started doing our releasing of the units at 80-25, and every new tenant is made aware of the fact that there's only 1 spot available.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
So,
Commissioner, do you have a question?
It was related to what was all discussed.
It's it's been answered? Yeah. Okay. Okay,
We'll work on the birds.
okay. Birds and parking. Okay, very good. Okay. Without any further comments, I don't see any citizens here, so I'm not gonna ask for any citizens' comments. I need a motion for case 2022-29P, the site plan approval. Motion to approve, Commissioner Matei, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Manchella, thank you. Call for the vote, Commissioner Osley,
Aye.
Commissioner Manchella,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw is absent, Commissioner Franklin is absent, Commissioner Giovanni,
Aye.
Commissioner Lakani is absent, Commissioner Berman,
Aye.
Commissioner Matei,
Aye.
now vote aye. Now, we need to vote on the relief as presented by staff in this case. I will need a motion to approve the relief, is that correct?
Is relief for both cases or just one?
I think it's just one case, right?
The site plan,
Okay.
Just the
site plan approval, yeah.
Yes. I have a motion to approve the relief as requested by,
Motion to approve the relief as requested by staff.
thank you, Commissioner Osley. Let's see. And seconded by Commissioner Giovanni. Okay, call for the vote. Commissioner Osley,
Aye.
Commissioner Manchella,
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin is absent again. Okay, Commissioner Giovanni,
Aye.
Commissioner Berman,
Aye.
Commissioner Matei,
Aye.
now vote aye. Okay. Moving along, and finally, case 2022-30P, the subdivision and dedication. Need a motion to approve, or disapprove, or a motion? Commissioner Osley, oh, excuse me.
I'll make a motion to approve.
To approve, thank you. Commissioner Berman, do I have a second?
Aye.
Commissioner Commissioner Matei, thank you. Okay, call for the vote. Commissioner Osley,
Aye.
Commissioner Manchella,
Aye.
Commissioner Giovanni,
Aye.
Commissioner Berman,
Aye.
Commissioner Matei,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye. Okay. These cases still need to be heard before the Board of Trustees, and they will have the final vote on moving these cases forward. They meet on the first Monday and third Mondays of every month, and you'll all be notified when that meeting will occur. Gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for choosing to go to your project. Good luck with the project. Thank you. No other, nothing before the commission?
I
This
think
meet-
there's something else that needs to be discussed.
What is that?
It's Carrie's last meeting here.
No way.
Yeah. Off to Orland Park to be deputy director.
No way.
And I just want to say what a great job she's done here the last 30 or 40 years she's been here. I mean, at least it seems that way. Certainly, she's been unbelievably good. That's the best thing I could say. I mean, she's done so much. She started as a planner, but she's doing CDBG. She was down in the building and property standards division, operating that whole division down there. And she's back up being the planning supervisor. So she's done basically everything, and she probably would be sitting here in my position, but she had a better offer, so.
And when are you leaving?
Next week, next Thursday.
Oh,
Yeah,
gee,
yeah.
bummer.
Best of luck.
Best
Thank
of luck
you,
to you.
thank you.
We're gonna sorely miss you.
I'll miss you all also.
Thank you for all
Thank
you've
you.
done
Yes,
and your support and everything.
yes.
Your professionalism and your steadiness, like Peter's, is greatly appreciated by
Yeah.
residents of
Yes.
the village.
No,
You
thank
will
you.
be missed.
You will definitely be missed.
I'll miss you all as well, so
Okay.
we'll check in on
Well,
Skokie
that's
happenings in the
unfortunate.
future.
It's an
Yeah,
unfortunate note, but
Yeah.
good for you, glad for you.
thank you, thank you.
Anything, any other good news, Peter?
No, sorry. Oh, I'll be leaving.
Well, that
We,
would-
we are getting a new community development director.
Yes,
on-
we will be,
On Monday,
yes.
and she's from Evanston, and she, very well qualified, and I hope she'll be here for many, many years.
Does she
Okay.
have any staff when she arrives?
Me? For,
Her name, Peter?
Marlene?
yeah, and Marlene is,
I mean, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, you can't go anywhere now.
her name is Joanna Niding,
Yeah.
I think that's how you say it.
United, yeah.
And she started in economic development in Evanston, and she's been community development director for many years now. So she's very well qualified. And she'll know all about TODs and parking problems and birds and all those things that,
Trash. yeah.
trash that I'm still learning about. Trees, everything.
Okay, well, on that note, this meeting is adjourned.
Peter, are you gonna be here the next meeting?